His story is one of determination. It is hustle. It is grind. He is one of the good guys in the business. Vik Chokshi is with us. He is senior editor of gambling at Fox Sports. We're going to talk about his career, what makes him inspirational. You can follow him on Twitter at DocSquad33. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. I look at your career, Vik, and anybody that is living and trying to make it in sports media, they could look at what you've gone through and take inspiration from that. And that is the basis of this conversation here. The grind, what does that look like for you? And how much have you had to really channel that into what you're doing in order to get to where you are today?
Yeah, the grind is real, man. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it. And I hope just sharing my story can help some other people that are out there as well. But again, the grind is real, man. So I've had an interesting career arc, as my wife likes to say. I had an IT degree from Marquette, was in the IT field for about 8 years, went the entrepreneurship route, did that for a little while. And then it was about 6 years ago or so, I was having kind of a midlife crisis and really wanted to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. I have a little bit of a different story than a lot of people. Like, I lost my parents pretty young in my life. And so I knew then that life is short, right? I felt it and I saw it in real life. And so I didn't want to have any regrets. I really wanted to pursue what I loved. And that's always been sports. I'm born and raised in Chicago. So a big Bulls, Bears, Cubs fan. Loved the Walter Payton Bears. That was the first player I fell in love with. The 89 Cubs is probably the first team that broke my heart. And I was lucky enough to grow up in the 90s with the Chicago Bulls and see all those amazing glory days, right? So I've been a big fan of the game, dabbled in blogging for a while, but it wasn't until about 6 years ago where I really wanted to go all in and pursue a job in the space. And I'm really lucky. I have an amazing wife who blessed me to go out there and try to make it happen, man. So I literally created a list of 500 people that I looked up to in the industry. And so started tweeting them, hitting them up on LinkedIn, started emailing them, did whatever I could to kind of get my name out there, get my foot in the door, and just take whatever opportunity that I can get. And literally 5 people wrote me back, which is pretty amazing, right? So uh, you've seen it. I've seen it working in sports. You get hit up every day, all day. And so for them to even write me back was pretty awesome at the time. So I'm always going to be indebted to those 5 people. Jason McIntyre, who
Yes.
at the time owned the Big Lead, and so he was at the Big Lead. Chad Millman from the Action Network, Rashid Ghazi, who's the president of Paragon Marketing right now, Ryan Glasspiegel, who's at the Big Lead as well, who's my guy, and then Vinay Mullik, who's the athletic director at Perspectives, where Anthony Davis actually went to high school. Now he's more on the business side of sports as well. But those 5 guys wrote me back. They jumped on phone calls with me. They actually listened to my story, and it was pretty awesome, man. So I was determined to make it. I'm appreciative that they hit me back. And then Jason was able to give me my first break. And that was a job at the Big Lead, part-time, just picking up whatever scraps I could. And then Chad Mimlin called a little while later. He gave me some freelance work. And so I just started piecing together as many jobs as I could, man. Just kept grinding. I was doing 7, 8, 9 freelance gigs and projects at the same time, basically to do whatever I could to make it in the industry. So when you ask about grinding, man, that's, sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's been pretty awesome to see just where I was. And I try to appreciate that now that I actually have a full-time job at Fox Sports, which is truly a blessing. The hours are tough. It's a grind in itself, but looking back on everything else, it's just truly amazing to be where I'm at right now. And I can't wait to keep it rolling, man.
They are so lucky to have you. We are joined by Vik Chokshi. I am Bryan Fenley. I have empathy for you, and I wanted to take it back to the earlier part of that comment of yours about your parents. I lost my dad at a young age and
Oh,
to
sorry.
cancer, and I look at him as the guiding light for any inspiration that I have. When you were in that moment, Vik, before you got to Fox Sports. And like you pointed out, you're doing 7, 8, 9 different freelance jobs at once. You've got a family, you've got children, you've got a wife, and you're trying just to make ends meet. How often would you think about the love you have for your parents in pushing you through those challenging testing times?
Yeah, and sorry for your loss as well. I mean, when you experience something like that, no one understands it unless you've been through it yourself, which sucks in a way, but you know what I mean. So it's a great question, man. Honestly, a lot. And so there were times when I wanted to give up. Just honestly speaking, I have two kids. They're young. I have a house. I have a wife, and so to be 40 plus years old and you're making X amount of money that you probably made more out of college, it was definitely tough. But looking back on it, man, I actually got my love for sports from my parents, which is pretty awesome. So I'm first generation Indian American. They came from India in the 70s and they both love sports, even my mom, which is kind of crazy. But so I grew up watching the Bears games with them, grew up watching the Cubs and the Bulls championships with them together. And that's literally where my love for sports came. And so to answer your question, that's kind of in a way what kept me going. That and just knowing that I've had my wife's support, which has been great. And I didn't want to disappoint her, right? Because she was basically, I mean, she's never said anything, but she gave me 5, 6 years to go out and pursue what I wanted to do as well. So, just my parents, my kiddos, my wife, all of that definitely kept me going when the struggle is real. You know how it is. Anybody that's worked in sports or still works in sports knows how it is. Every day is an adventure. Anything can happen. And especially when you're freelancing, you're not getting paid for months sometimes, right? Trying to get those invoices paid as well. So, all of that put together, it's tough, but they definitely had a big part to where I'm at today and what to keep me going.
You then got that well-deserved opportunity at Fox. And for you, that must have brought some comfort considering now you only had to focus on one particular job. Now it's got you working long hours. They have you doing a lot of different things, everything that you're able to do, and you're able to channel all of these different skills and talents on that. But knowing how hard it was for you to get to Fox, knowing those moments of self-doubt, not knowing when you'd get paid at certain times, to feel that finally you have one singular thing to work on. How proud do you think your parents must have felt when, if they were here to see that?
Yeah, I hope they would be, man, wherever they are. I hope they're looking down and happy. I never pictured myself working in sports. I mean, I always loved it growing up, but I'm also Indian. So it's always, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, engineer. You have these fixed career paths, and most of my friends do as well, right? And so to be out here and actually living out my dream at 42, it feels truly amazing. And I hope that they would be happy to see where I've made it. And, just being at Fox, also wanted to give a special shout out to Jason. Again, he's become like a mentor to me and pushed for me to get this job for a very long time. And then Andrew Lynch, who's my boss here at Fox Sports, has just been truly amazing. He gave me the opportunity. I know there were some other amazing candidates for this job as well. And, for being old in real life, I'm kind of young in the sports space, right? I've only been in the game for 6, 7 years. And so to be able to get this opportunity means a lot. And I definitely have those two guys to thank, all those five other guys that I mentioned, my family, my friends as well. So, without having good mentorship, and maybe that's something we can touch on too, but
Yeah.
it's very important to have. I didn't even really know they were like my mentors in real life. It's just me bugging them all the time. Like, hey, how can I, what else can I do? How can I get here? And so, but Jason definitely pushed my name as much as he could for a couple of years. And then Andrew gave me that opportunity. So it's truly been a blessing.
Let's go to those mentors you were talking about. And of course, Jason McIntyre, who I have so much adoration for and his talents and his career. You made that cold email to him. And like you said, I think you had like 500 emails that you put out and you got 5 responses. He was one of them. What does that say about Jason as someone who is generous and understands the grind, and how he has been that, as you talked about, that backbone for your career. What is it about him that saw talent in you where he took the time to spend it with you and to help you on your rise?
Yeah, Jason's a great guy. First of all, I know he gets a lot of crap for his hot, which he does have some crazy hot takes. The LeBron stuff is always, me and him fight about that. We've been fighting about that for like 10 years. But truly just an awesome guy. I met him a long time ago, actually, with Blogs with Balls in Chicago. And so, met him, said what's up to him. I think it's very important for younger people to also like understand relationships are very important when it comes to getting a job in sports, right? And we can talk about that in a little bit. But I met Jason at Blogs with Balls. We followed each other on Twitter. I interacted with him a few times, and so he kind of knew who I was. But again, I'm one of a million people that hit him up and probably replying to his LeBron takes and NFL takes, right? But we kept in touch a little bit, but I wouldn't say he knew who I really was. But it just goes out to what kind of person he is. He's always been supportive since that phone call. Like honestly, he jumped on the phone with me the next day after that email, was like, "Hey, I remember meeting you at Blogs with Balls. If you can write, send me some samples. I'll take a look at it." And ever since he gave me that opportunity, he's always been one of my biggest advocates. And so he understands the grind. I think it's important for everybody to know you have to start at the bottom no matter how big you get, right? And so he's one of those guys that genuinely helps younger people in the space. I see him replying to a lot of people on Instagram, a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people on LinkedIn, just out of the goodness of his heart. Like he wants to give back. And that's what he did with me. And again, even at the big lead, he was the one who was like, I know you know gambling. Why don't you start writing about it? Right. And so, because I didn't know, I was just picking up, doing whatever jobs I could get, just news cycle stuff. And he again gave me that opportunity. And anytime I've had a question relating to my career, even when I got another job and had some conflict with the big lead, he's always like, listen, man, you got to do what's best for you and your family. He's always looked out for me. And so that's how he kind of slowly became my mentor in the space. But it's important to have people like that. I really feel not only in sports, but in life. And so I hope there's more people like Jason that are out there helping out younger people. And that's my whole thing. I think now that I've gotten a little older, now that I have this job, I also want to be able to give back. So when students hit me up or people hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, I always make a case to reply. I do the best that I can. Listen, I'm still small time. People ask me for like tickets and stuff. I'm like, listen, I don't get tickets. I don't even have any gear yet, right? But again, it's like, how can I answer any questions? How can I help you get your foot in the door? And I'll give honest advice that I can, because I do remember those guys writing me back, and it's all about passing it along the line.
One of the places that people can hit you up is on Twitter at Doc Squad 33. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. I love giving back and mentoring as well. And I think that there's a greater appreciation for that when you do start at the bottom and you understand that nothing was given to you. And the fact that you know that, and I wanted to hit on relationships because that was something that you talked about, but we aren't where we are without a form of a relationship. Like you can have a talent, you have a lot of talent, but you would add that relationships are formative and they are very important to the ascendancy of a career. The value of relationships for you, how much stock are you putting into that as to explain where you are today?
I would put a lot of stock into it. I think everyone works hard. Everyone loves sports, right? And those are always going to be like prerequisites. Like how smart is this guy? How talented is he or she? Are they going to work hard, right? But that's all a given. Everybody that works in this space is going to check those bills. In my opinion, everybody that I've met is brilliant, works super hard. It's all about getting that opportunity, and getting an opportunity in sports is kind of a catch 22 in a way, right? Because you got to have all this experience to get a really good job, but then it's hard to get your foot in the door, right? And so that's why a lot of people do whatever it takes, do free posts, like free stories. I was writing stories for free to get my name out there. I was writing stories for $5 to get my name out there, right? Features pieces, because you're just hoping that someone sees it, or you're hoping to clip that and be able to send it to a person like Jason if they ever do reply, right? But going back to relationships, I think it is very, very important because, like anything else in life, once you know somebody, once you know the work that they can put out, you kind of trust that person, right? And so then when an opportunity comes along, you're going to think of that person as opposed to a random resume that you're looking at or a random application on LinkedIn. And I think that's why it is so important. And people, if you treat people well, you have empathy, you work hard, I do really believe it builds and compounds, and it will come around. I've seen it firsthand in my own life. But again, you're always, I think, Chad Millman, for example, he didn't have an opportunity for me the first time I talked to him. You know, he had me on his podcast, which was pretty dope because then I was able to use that and springboard it a little bit with Jason as well. But he saw that I was hustling, he saw that I was grinding, and then in a couple of months, he gave me a call saying, "We have a freelance opportunity. I thought about you." Right. And so that's where relationships come into play. That's where it's important to get on as many people's radars as you can as well. But even this relationship I formed with Andrew Lynch, who's my boss now, Jason introduced me to him a couple of years ago. And it took a couple of years, but literally 2 years ago, we had a conversation. I hit him up, letting him know I would love to do anything I could at Fox. And whether that's a features piece on the NBA or gambling, just keep me posted. And we've talked since then multiple times on Twitter. We've gotten to know each other a little bit, a couple of phone calls, right? So, again, and the last thing I'll say is a lot of people use relationships to gain something in their lives, right? And it's nowadays it's become very transactional, where like, oh, I'm going to be friends with this guy or hit him up and do something for them so that they can get me back, right? And the last biggest thing I would say is do the opposite of that. Try to build and form and cultivate real authentic relationships. Like, don't expect anything from somebody, right? If you're going to be friends with them or colleagues with them, just ask them about their lives, like check in, BS about sports, and eventually once they get to know you, they will automatically think of you when that opportunity or that role comes up, right? And that's literally what happened with me in this Fox role. Is just, again, Jason was pushing my name, Andrew had known about me, and then once they were hiring and expanding their gambling team, they thought of me as one of their candidates. And then, of course, you have to interview and work hard and show that you're good for the role. But again, so answering your question, I really do feel like it had a big part to play, at least in my ascent in the sports business industry.
Vik Chokshi is with us. I am Bryan Fenley. Of course, he is senior editor of gambling at Fox Sports. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. So the cultivation of relationships is so important because it took time. You'd gotten to know Andrew, but that was a relationship that progressed and it didn't happen overnight. And that's the other thing is you mentioned, and I love that it's not transactional as far as the relationships. Get to know the person from a real perspective, authentic, and not just as like you're using someone, but also realize that these things take time, these relationships, and then they will lead to some really neat things. The relationship, and this is something you hit on a little bit earlier, Vik, but with your wife and how she has been so empowering to you in your pursuit of your dreams.
Yeah, I'm lucky, man. And so he's held it down financially. So, when you work in sports, again, you don't make a lot of money. I think there's this big misconception out there of people that don't work in the industry that think everyone that works in sports just gets to go to cool games and makes a lot of money. And especially not when you're starting off, and especially not when you're freelancing, right? And trying to get your name out there. So not only was she able to hold us down financially, but I think more than anything, emotionally, mentally, to be able to get that green light from whoever your partner is goes a very long way, especially on the days where you're thinking about wrapping it up, right? And so there was a little bit of guilt for me. Again, I'm over 40 years old. I have a couple of kiddos as well. And so, you see all your friends doing well, family doing well, and then you start looking at how much money you're bringing in, and struggling for a while. My second kiddo had a lot of health issues as well. And so, the bills are piling up. You're kind of looking at that, weighing everything that you're going through. And again, I finished my MBA from the University of Illinois, so a very good business school, and I could get a job, like a marketing job or a job in business that would pay me a lot more money, if I wanted to work outside of sports. So you're kind of weighing all that in your head, and if you don't have the that support system, whether it's a partner, a wife, or friends or family, you're not going to be able to make it. I think not only in sports but in life, right? And so again, it's very, very important to have a very good support system. Do whatever you can to find that mentor, or have the right friends around you, right? I think that's another big thing. So again, I'm Indian. My friends are doing well. They're killing it, but not at one time have they ever brought up like their careers or how well they're doing. They've always been supportive, right? So, every article that I write, I take the link and I send it on like 17 WhatsApp chats, and I, hit it up on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram, and all my friends, family, all of them like it, right? And they check it out. I still don't know if my wife knows exactly what I do, but she'll be the first one to like it on Facebook, right? And then like forward it on to her friends. So you have to have that support system. You have to have that support. And so again, without her, I definitely would not be where I'm at right now. I would probably be working a normal 9 to 5 gig, probably in marketing somewhere.
You are that support system for your kids. As they grow up and you tell them more about your story and coming up, when they ask you how you made it, what are you going to tell them?
Great question, man. I still don't think I've made it. I have a long way to go. I love learning. I love, keeping this rolling. But I think just parenting in itself is probably harder than any job there is out there, right? So for me, it's always been just spending as much time as I can with them, trying to set just a good example for my kiddos, and trying to teach them from a very young age about just working hard, responsibility, being a good person, having empathy, right? Those are kind of the things that I'm trying to instill in them from a very young age. And at the end of the day, you can just be a good parent, be there, be present, and then whatever's going to happen is going to happen, right? But for me, it's fun. My kiddo sometimes will be checking out the internet, or I used to go on TV or radio or podcasts, and do a lot of things like this, and she'd get excited from seeing me on TV, right? Or we're watching a Bears game or a Bulls game together, and she gets hyped and she'll be like, "Oh, are you gonna write about this, or is this something that you're gonna do?" So it's fun. She created her own little podcast. She got on the mic, we recorded it. My older one was trying to be like me. So it's a lot of fun kind of going through these different stages with them, and just trying to help them grow and be a good parent. But I wouldn't say I made it, but it's just more about kind of instilling good principles in them and just showing them the grind. That's what this whole episode's about, right? But it's really, you got to work hard. Trust me, anybody that knows me like before I got married knows that I was a kind of like a corner cutter. You're trying to juke the system. You're trying to do whatever you can to make it and hustle a little bit. Maybe that's because I'm born and raised in the city of Chicago, and you got to be a hustler to kind of get out of there, and kind of succeed in life, right? But none of that works. You have to work hard. There is no other way to ascend in life, whether that's in your career or in school, or whatever else you're trying to do, right? So I think that's the biggest thing that I want to teach my kids. Listen, you got to work hard, you got to do things the right way, and you got to treat people well, and everything else will kind of work its way out moving forward.
When your daughter took the microphone on the podcast, how would you rate her impression of you?
It was pretty good, man. I would give her a good 8. She's got a good voice, and she's already like fake typing on my computer, which is nuts. I've saved that recording. I hope one day she does go on to do something in sports. That would be truly amazing. But if not, it's cool as well. I'll just be happy if they're happy doing whatever they love to do, right? I think that's kind of the other big thing, again, there's not a lot of Indian people that work in sports, and it is because of kind of a old school mentality. Whereas like working in sports, there's not a lot of money. Like, what are you doing? Right. And so when it comes to my kiddos, I'll be happy if they, whatever makes them happy is cool with me.
Last question for you. I know what is making you happy right now, on top of being a dad, on top of being a husband, and that is being at Fox. And when people say you are the senior editor of gambling, there are a lot of layers to that responsibility. So, what does it look like in all of the different channels that you have your hands in here from a content perspective with Fox?
Yeah, great question, man. So I've been here 2 months, and so it's still evolving. It's always fluid, but that's what makes it fun. So there's a bunch of mini jobs built in one, which has been great. It allows me to use my kind of MBA business side background, my love for sports, my love for gambling, and then everything that I've kind of picked up freelancing over the past few years. But first things first is working with the talent. So it's amazing. I get to work with Jason. So he'll file his gambling pieces that go up on Fox, his college football picks, his NFL picks, his Super Six stuff, and then basically I touch on that, get it across the finish line. We add some links, make sure it's edited correctly. So just working with great talent like Sammy P, Jeff Schwartz, Jason McIntyre, that's one part of the job. The second part of the job is working with a lot of cross-functional teams, so social media team, the Fox Bet team, working with their odds makers and their product and the lines, and making sure that's all kind of up to date as well. And so just working within the different departments at Fox, because gambling is a huge initiative, right? And so it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so basically you are keeping everybody else up to date. You're working with other channels and other products and teams here at Fox, which is truly amazing. The talent here is second to none. Just the way they conduct meetings, just how efficient they are, and just the talent level. I've never been at a place where it's this high. Everybody's smart, everybody works hard, everybody has one goal, and that's literally to see the company succeed. So, that's another part of the job. And then we have a Super Six game, which is a free to play game. So, as you may or may not know, gambling is not legalized in all 50 states, right? So basically, our Fox Bet is legal in 4 states. There's more coming down the road, but we have the Super Six game. That's a free to play game where people basically choose which team is going to win by how many points. So it's a type of gambling in a way, right? But it's also a game. So we create content for people to be able to then download that game, play on their phones, and then get them into the system, get them into the funnel, so that when those states do become legalized, we hope that they use Fox Bet as opposed to some of the other sports books that are out there, right? So, every day is different. Every day is an adventure. And then we also do, case in point, the Aaron Rodgers news this week. So it's all about coming up with a content strategy, right? So what are some of the pieces that we're always going to do? And then when things happen, like AR being out due to COVID, putting together a piece as to how it relates to gambling. And so, what's Aaron Rodgers worth to the point spread? What is the new spread that came out? Did it impact the Green Bay Packers Super Bowl futures? So, whipping together a piece like that, doing the daily content strategy, and then also taking a wider lens and looking at, the content strategy as a whole is kind of the last piece of the job as well. So it keeps me on my toes, which is great. We have an amazing team. We have some freelancers. We have a researcher. I work hand in hand with Andrew, who is the man. If he's been in this game for a lot longer, he's been over 10 years at Fox, and he was a former pro poker player. So again, he's got the media thing down. He understands things from a gambler's perspective as well. And so the ability to work with him, learn from him has been great. And then this job has truly been all that I've expected it to be and more. So in 2 months, I'm again being able to put together my gambling side, my business side, and then my media side all in one, kind of having that convergence has been a lot of fun so far.
The patience is paying off. The hard work is showing itself. Vik Chokshi, you took a chance on yourself. You took a gamble on yourself, and now you are starting to hit the jackpot. Vic, I'm Bryan Fenley. anchor for Fox Sports Radio. You're on Twitter at DocSquad33. Follow him for all that great content. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Vic, thank you, man. This was really fun.
Thanks again for having me on, Brian. It was a pleasure. When I get out to LA, we're definitely hooking up.
Definitely.